Well, I am honored to be here and just excited to be here. I'm grieving that I didn't spend another 24 hours here because it's just, even coming in last night on the roads, I was like, gosh, I wish I could explore this area a whole bunch more. I am just a Yahoo that God can use. I tell people on Sundays in the Old Testament, God spoke through a donkey, maybe he can do it again. And so, so honestly, just honored to be here. And my hope today, more than talking and being a talking head, is really to turn it into a conversation. And this size, when I saw it last night, when Kay showed me, I was like, yes. Because this is what I enjoy sharing with. And also on your end, this is the size that I enjoy learning into, to be able to actually tackle some things and talk about some things that I'm actually wrestling with instead of pie in the sky, instead of things I can't relate with. And so just truly honored. If I sound like I know anything for a moment, please take it with a grain of salt. And I say that wholeheartedly. I'm just a person on the journey, just trying to be used by God, just trying to tell one more person about Christ. For me, when I heard about Jesus, it was the greatest news I'd ever heard. And so I grew up in the church, came to Christ as a junior, sophomore in high school, and never had ever heard about a relationship with Jesus in our area of the country. I'd say most people have never heard about a relationship with Jesus. They've heard about church and going to church and getting confirmed, but have never heard just about Jesus and how he wants to change your life. And so when I heard that news, it's the greatest news that I'd ever heard. So we're going to kind of share, just to kind of give you an idea of this first part. I was kind of asked to cover Embrace's story, Embrace's vision, and outreach. And to cover our story, it's a 10-minute long clip, so it's a little bit. But more than me just talking, I thought this would be the best way to kind of show you, just for you guys to be able to get your head around kind of where we are, who we are, even what the buildings look like, and even just the different phases. We started out with 32 people, and now we have however many people. So I've kind of seen the gamut of different sizes. A lot of you are in existing churches. My hat is off to you. I feel like you guys have had it 10 times harder than I have. And so again, I'm just a fool who knows very little, who can share and encourage, and yet I feel like honestly in an existing church the soil is twice as hard to do some things, and yet whether it's a new church, an old church, people are people, and so same challenges, they just may look different a little bit. And so, but here's our story. This video clip is about 3 years old, and then I'll fill in the dots from there. So. My favorite thing since the start of the church is God continued to reach the most unlikely of people. I always say I'm the most unlikely of person to be a pastor, and I feel like that's the story of our church as a whole. It's probably the thing I appreciate the most is having those first 3 years where we didn't grow. It was hard. It wasn't exciting. It was scary. I think for me, looking back at those moments is what keeps us centered on Christ. We're far from perfect and having everything figured out. It's almost the opposite. It's like, Lord, we don't have things figured out, so would you just continue to show up and move and do your thing, and we'll just follow you wherever you want to go. Looking back, it just keeps us grounded as a church. And even for me personally, it keeps me grounded. And that it's not because of us, it's in spite of us that God has done such great things. So I mentioned in there those first 3 years, when I came out of seminary, I was 24 years old. Not having any desire to start a church. When I said it in there, that's putting it very lightly. I thought it was a terrible idea, and especially in Sioux Falls, I didn't think Sioux Falls needed another church. And church politics. I don't know if this conference has church politics. Wherever two or more are gathered, there's church politics, right? And so for me to be appointed was truly an act of God. And Roger, who I talk about, Roger's now actually my DS, which is unbelievable. I can't believe my pastor that led me to Christ is now my pastor again. I'm so thankful for that. Roger warned me. He said, Adam, you'll be the most watched seminary grad in the history of the Dakotas Conference. And so those first 3 years were brutal. Just trying to survive, but also brutal from colleagues, to be honest with you. Yeah. The next youngest person was 24, 25 years older than me. And to be, like, why are you there? That's where you go. You go to Sioux Falls when you're 50, not when you're 24. Did I mention I didn't want to be here? And also just like, you're trying to take our people, you're trying to take whatever. And I'm like, gosh, I just have never had that desire in my life. Like, I want to tell people about Christ. So I'm even going through that. Then when we started to see success, it's so weird. We're so weird with success. We see it, and for some reason, we want to tear it down instead of cheer it on. It's like, man, you're reaching for someone for Jesus. You might think differently than me. You might be this or that. I don't care. You're reaching people for Jesus. Keep going. And so just even that, I can remember 5 years in, so we had 2 years of growth. I had a colleague that I didn't know, so there wasn't even a relationship to kind of say it. At our area Sioux Falls get-together, he just said, Adam, I just want you to know you make our lives a lot harder. And I was like, I don't even know what that means. And so those first few years were really, really hard, and yet I'm so grateful for those years now. You can't say it in the midst of storms, but sometimes you look back and you're like, thank God for a storm or two, just to remind me, like, my foundation isn't my own 2 feet. My foundation is you, Father. So grateful for that. So a little bit of kind of updating from there. What's not shown in the video, we've since then launched a Sertoma campus on the west side of Sioux Falls. So that's at a middle school right now. It's running right around 325 in worship. We have to be out of the building by next August. So it's kind of like, okay, we will find a place to worship now between then and there. So that's going. Our campus pastor there is phenomenal. After that, we launched a campus called our St. Croix campus. And this is one of the cool things about the Methodist Church. Everybody's asking me like what my thoughts are on 2019 and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I honestly don't even really care. Like, we got a whole lot of other things to focus on. Man, there's so many other like things to wrestle with. And man, I want to just reach people for Jesus. But what's so cool within the connectional system, so we have a church, there was a church called St. Croix Valley United Methodist Church, 4 hours away from us, that heard about our story and approached the bishop. We share the same bishop with the Minnesota Conference, and they said, we wonder if they'd be interested in taking us on. And so they reached out to us, and I think they were kind of thinking, hey, would they take us on and we can remain the same? And so we did at that church, and then I'll open it up to questions here in a second once I finish kind of the story part. We met with them, and we tried to sell them on the idea of this is a terrible idea. No kidding. Like, our agenda, I just kept telling our team, try to convince them that this is the worst idea ever. Because then if they say yes, they'll know we'll know it's God, and there will be no bait and switch of you told me this and you told me that, because we'll give them the worst case scenario possible, and then anything else will be roses. And so we met with them a couple different times, and then the last time I came to, and I just shared with them, the younger folks were in their 60s, and there was probably 45 people left in the congregation. And I did my best job of convincing them not to do this. And it felt like a funeral. Like, I was like, we are talking about someone dying. It's almost like end of life decisions. You know, when you have that hard conversation of like, what are you going to do? So we just shared, hey, can we have a choir? Probably not. We just don't have choirs. And I love choirs, love traditional, but that's just, I'm like, if we're going to do it, let's give our best chance of success. Like, let's do our best chance, our best foot forward instead of kind of halfway or whatever. I'm like, if we're going to do this, let's do it all the way. So no. Are we going to keep the same staff? We're not. They can reapply if they want to. I mean, literally, like, really hard questions. And so I got done sharing, and a gal got up. Her husband was the choir director. So I was like, okay. The choir director of like 25 years. I mean, that kind of thing. Like, not just I filled in a couple of Sundays. Like, I think he like built like everything. And so she said, she got up and she gave this, I mean, it was like drop the mic moment. She said, guys, this is really, really hard to hear. And she turned and looked at her own people, didn't look at me, just looked at the people. And she said, here's what we've come to. we're not concerned about any of our walks with Christ. We're not concerned at all about where all of us are at in our walk with Christ. But I don't know about you, but I'm so scared about where my daughter's at. I'm so scared of where my daughter's at, and even more so, I'm so scared where my grandkids are at. Because I said, they don't know Jesus. They don't have a walk with the Lord. And she said, we've been trying to reach the next people for how long? It hasn't worked. So let's give it a chance. Let's just try. And she sat down, and no kidding, it was almost unanimous vote afterwards. And that was a few days later. So it wasn't just this moment that was warm fuzzy. The vote was a couple days later and still that strong. And every time I go back, I was just back there again probably 2 months ago. Pete, he's got a scooter. I mean, so it's a bunch of young folks and then the original St. Croix Valley folks. And he came up and he said, Adam, we love it here. At this year's version of VBS, they had over 200 and some kids. And he said, this is what we've been praying for years. And to see all these kids and to see baptisms regularly, it's just awesome. And so that part of the story has happened. Actually, in the last month, so this is part of the stories that you never really hear. A month ago, we merged our downtown campus and our 57th Street campus together. So now we are 4 physical campuses with 5 with our online. And that was a hard decision. Those are, again, the moves that you don't always hear about. And yet, I only wish we would have done it sooner. And when I say that, this spring, we are over 400 in worship at that campus. In May, we had a Sunday over 600 in worship. It's the 3rd or 4th largest church on it by its own in South Dakota and North Dakota, and we closed it. We basically closed it, which makes no sense. And yet, why did we do it? Because we wanted to put our best foot forward. We did everything possible. The campus pastor there is now our main worship leader at the campus that we merged together with. I met with so many people. My schedule has been packed. Just meeting with people, kind of explaining why we're doing it and that we care about it. It was Becky and I's home campus, the downtown campus. We live downtown Sioux Falls. It's the only campus that I walked around almost on a nightly or every other night and prayed around it. So I said, I was able to get up and say that, this is my home campus. And yet we just think we can be so much wiser with our funds. That campus, it didn't cost us because our giving exceeded our expenses, but it cost $26,000 a month to keep open. And now we can shift that $26,000 in a different way and move forward even stronger. And so sometimes it doesn't look like you're going forward. Sometimes it feels like you're taking a step back or even 3 steps back to move forward. And yet those are the types of moves that I'm like, man, I want to do more of those kind of moves. They're painful. I can say that today. A month ago, I wouldn't have been saying that. I'd have been like, would you guys mind coming back and just filling in for me for a couple of days? Because there were some hard conversations that came from it. But that's really kind of the high points of our story. We have nothing figured out. So any questions about our story, just as a whole? And no worries if you don't have any questions at all either. But any questions about all of that?
What are your practices to stay centered in the midst of all of that? What are your practices to stay centered?
As a person? So right now, I had never heard of it, the emotionally healthy spirituality. Have you ever been through that? Holy cats. I'd encourage all of you to get that book. So it's a book. The pastor, I had never heard of him before, and I think the material is 20, 25 years old. He's from New York City. Just wonderfully rich. So there's a book, and then there's a devotional after it. I seriously, I'm telling everybody, it's like sitting down with Jesus and a counselor. There's some weeks where there's some days that and it's like you read a page and a half twice a day. There's been days in the last few weeks that I've found myself weeping from just simple, here's some scripture, here's a simple reading, here's whatever. So that's been really beneficial for me. So close friends that you can be just raw with and just share the good, bad, and ugly with. So I've needed that in this season. So having that, my wife is the greatest truth teller, my biggest cheerleader in life. I'm so thankful for her. I've never been more thankful for her. Going to a counselor. If you haven't seen a counselor yet, you need to. If you haven't seen a counselor for a long time, I'm concerned you're fairly messed up. So you need to go see a counselor. I'm serious. So if you think you don't need a counselor, then that's when That's what I'm concerned. So go see a counselor, be a part of a small group. Stay on your knees before Jesus. Never forget that you're a sinner in need of Jesus. And I think those different things is what keeps me centered and keeps me grounded. And everybody wants to stand on a stage. This is kind of what's been in my heart this week. Everybody wants to stand on a stage. And yet what's done in private is what gives us the ability to stand on a stage. And I've never been more thankful for that groundedness in that area of just sitting with God when no one else sees me. And I'm just spending time with him. Most days lately, not because I want to, but because I have to spend time with him. So, yeah, it's definitely a challenge, though. Yeah, some days better than others. So just kind of the day in, day out, learning to say no. So even traveling, in this season, I've said no to pretty much everything. Of just like, gosh, man, I feel like even next month was supposed to be with Adam Hamilton in Atlanta, and man, that's hard to say no to Adam. He's incredible, and yet I was like, gosh, I think I just need to stay home, and so I did. And so just learning to say no and being really intentional, and also taking a Sabbath every week is actually a command, so you might want to listen to that one. And it's on the top 10 list. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like, I just think about how often, like, as pastors, we're in sin by not following the Sabbath. I'm guilty of it myself. And we convince ourselves of this and that and everything else, and I have to, and I'm busy. We're all busy. And so I think just forcing that into our time. It was so cool. We actually we did a series really kind of about the rhythms of life in August, and my oldest son's 11. And one day, we were sitting on our front porch, and my son said, and this is talk about Conviction City, he's like, Dad, so what day is your Sabbath? And I was like, okay, all right. I didn't know this was going to turn into accountability. But I was like, Friday is my Sabbath. And I'm fortunate Saturday is as well. Like it's been one of the blessings of this season. I work a full day Sunday, I work a full day Thursday, and really a full day on Monday. When I say a full day, it's kind of like sun up to sundown on those 3 days. So my Friday and Saturday is holy. And so I fight for that. And so having an 11-year-old son or having 4 kids in general, they will throw the smackdown on your life. So that's a great question, though. Yeah. Any other questions about anything? Another thing that's really been exciting that's not a part of this too is, so we've gotten into network churches. So just in so we've had one church with us for 2 years in a town of probably 500 people. No, they're probably closer to 700 people in the town. They were down to like 30 in worship, and they are totally separate from Embrace. It's a Methodist church that hit reset on their church. They have their own pastor, but they utilize our message on Sunday. So it's real time too. We don't want to make a cent. We just want to cover our expenses. So I think they're paying like $400 a month or $300 a month. And so they get the message. And this is more on the pastor just being an awesome guy. So this is not me. That church went from like 30 in worship to 125 in worship in less than a month in a small town. And I mean, it's amazing. And so now we have 5 Methodist churches, actually 4 Methodist churches and a boys camp that we just found out they didn't have a worship service even though they wanted one. And so we found out, we were like, what do you need for technology? And they said, we don't have any. So one lady in the church gave $12,000, paid for it all, and now they're with us for 2 years at least. And so they're utilizing our message. And so that's awesome too. Just in small town South Dakota to utilize that. And that's been another outside the box thing that our conference, our bishop has really been behind. He's like, how can I asked him, I said, Bishop, I'd love to consider never closing another Methodist church in the conference. And sometimes you need to close a church. So sometimes a dead thing just needs to go be with Jesus. And so, it's like, I love you so much, it's time to go, But other times, like just to consider, like what would it look like? Methodist clergy are expensive. I don't want another one on staff, honestly. I'm like, I do not want another elder. Ugh. I look at the price tag even on me, and I'm like, makes me want to die a slow death. And so a lot of churches can't afford a clergy, can't afford an elder. And so, but could they afford this? Or if they can't afford this, can we just find a way to pay for it for them to see if they can grow? So one of the churches has got, I think, 20 people right now, and they just started, I think the average age, no joke, is like 70 years old. And so it's been working. So that's another part of our thing. And I'd love to see like 30 or 40 churches with us and just us resourcing them. And if there's something in the message that I mention, we get it to them. So they can say, hey, Adam mentioned this, and here's this. So trying to get that as seamless as possible.
And stay connected with your online campus.
How do we stay connected with them? A couple different ways. So there's the online chat. We utilize Life Church's online church platform. Really, though, where we're getting more and more traction is just Facebook. So just doing Facebook Live for our messages and having a couple people on staff just on there chatting and connecting. Even dropping things in like, hey, if you want to be prayed for, we can pray for you. Hey, if you're interested in information, you can do that. So trying to do everything that we can there. We currently don't have an online campus pastor in that role. I've told people so many times, if I didn't feel like I was supposed to be the lead pastor, the job I would take at Embrace is online and social media. That's just my love language personally, and so that's what I would jump into because the potential there is so high. Even my dad, we did a series called Great is Thy Faithfulness. My dad's had this horrible pain, like debilitating pain for the last 8-9 years, and my dad's church is the online campus. And there's so many people like him across the country who can't get out of their house. They're home, they're bedridden, they're homebound, and so just even those simple type of ministries that you can do that way. So they actually, my dad's in a small group. It's basically a pain small group. And people can call in and encourage each other, and they spend time in the Word together and then pray for each other at the end. And a lot of them, they're laying physically in a bed during the group. So it's crazy what you can do through technology. There's also the negative side. People, aren't going to come to church, blah, blah, blah. They're going to go to the lake and watch whatever. For me, I always just see the positive outweighs the negative. And you're going to have some people that do that. And I even share, tell people, hey, man, there's something about being in person. Hopefully it's a front door for people who can get to church, but for people who can't, it is their church. And so constantly looking for ways that we can connect people. But we have a long way to grow in that area. We have nothing figured out in that area. Yeah, great question.
I'm curious, you said, I think according to the video, just at the very beginning, like a few years ago, you said stagnant, but then the first location that you went to, and you said the first Sunday, 100 to 200.
Mm-hmm.
Hearing that on the video, that sounds like magical.
It does.
Was there anything, maybe it was, but was it literally just more space and some more pain? What practice?
Yeah.
Did you all have to admit that? Did you just show up that day and you were as surprised as anyone? What were any of the other days?
Great question. And it actually crazy. It actually went from 100 over 300. I think it went from 100 325.
Even more magical.
Yeah. It was seriously. And then the next week you're like, it's gonna fall off, right? And then it just goes higher. And so it's one of those moments of like, what? So here's what it is. And this is what kept me going through all the politics in the conference. At that time, other than one church that had it's still alive and still doing well, it's been 40 years of failure. So even when I first started, the first month, I can't tell you the amount of times that I heard people say, not even in a critical heart, when Embrace closes. Mm-hmm. It's it's doomed to fail. I'm like, can you imagine if you talked about kids that way? Mm-hmm. When your kid dies, what? We just had her. she seems to be totally healthy. She's right here. I'm like, you'd be considered a psycho. But it's, I think the biggest thing is trusting those Holy Spirit inspired nudges. Mm-hmm. That for me is what I just look for. And so in that season, I just kept feeling if we can get to a Sunday morning, and because we were Sunday evening, and I just kept, if we get to a Sunday morning, and you can chalk up a little bit of oh yeah, I'm sure it will matter, maybe kind of sorta, but in my soul I was like, no, I think this is a big deal. I think it's a really big deal. And so I don't think it had anything to do with the space. I think the space helped that it was ours and we could make it look like Embrace and whatever. But I think more than anything, it was Sunday morning. So we went to Sunday morning. Even our current, he was an executive pastor for a while, and now he's our T-Campus pastor. He's our longest staff person we have. He said for 2 years people invited him to Embrace, and yet he never even gave it a second thought because it was on Sunday evenings. He said the first Sunday morning, I was there. And it's crazy. So finding those things in the culture here, we might look alike here in this room. I know there are culture aspects of here that I don't have a clue of. So finding out those things and listening to them. I mean, just like, I had to go to Kentucky to realize who I was as a South Dakota kid. And it was so crazy when you really start to see, like, so I think for us, it was the Sunday morning. So we went Sunday morning and bam. And really one other quick thing. So just to try to explain those differences, in South Dakota, if you said, who is going to hell? It would get really awkward and quiet. And then someone, I'm like, no, who's going to hell? There's got to be somebody that's going to go to hell. So who's going? You know, they'd probably say this. They'd probably say this. Well, and we have our penitentiary on a hill in our town. So maybe someone in the penitentiary that's murdered a bunch of people. I mean, translation: nobody in South Dakota is going to hell. We're all Catholic, Lutheran. Nobody's going to hell. Everybody's going to heaven. If you said who's going to hell in Kentucky, everyone would be like, oh my goodness, I think all of us. You know, like, I'm worried about you, I'm worried about myself, I'm worried about him. And there's billboards that are saying, like, you are going to hell. Like I would drive through the countryside and I'm like, am I right with you, Jesus? Like, and so so outside the church in Kentucky, like just reaching the unchurched, they all feel like, man, hey, you should come to church. In Kentucky, I know I should. Like, I know I'm living in sin. Like, I know I should. If you say that, like, you should go to church, they'd be like, I know my mom wants me to go to church, but I got confirmed, and we go on Easter and Christmas, and everybody's great. And so just realizing those subtle differences. So for us, like in South Dakota, it's not like you need to be right with Jesus. My message that I try to cry out is, you haven't heard the full story. And God wants to be a part of your life and change everything about you. And because in South Dakota, again, it's the guy who grew up in church and got confirmed and is good with Jesus, or good with God. He wouldn't even say Jesus. But he gets to 35 years old and he's like, man, I don't know what's missing in my life. Like, I got my cute wife, I got my house, I got a career, I don't know what's missing. So maybe I need a bigger house. Maybe she doesn't look like she used to look, and so maybe it's my secretary that I'm going to sleep with. And so there's no even like, maybe it's God. So that's what you get to tell people. So it's learning those little things. That's been kind of the weird aha moment of figuring out, like, what are those tiny things that you just like don't even pick up on, that are so there you just can't see it. So
along those same lines,
yeah.
would you mind answering a similar question with the church you said I think you just connected with, I think the network church?
Yeah.
I mean, you said it wasn't just you with the messages, but in a month, to go from that, whatever, 20, 30, over 100.
Yeah.
What were some of the, similar question, what happened there in such a short amount of time?
Great.
To be seeing that response?
So that church specifically, so they brought in a younger pastor who is, him and his wife are a tag team. So you don't just get Marty, you get him and his wife, who are amazing. She's just fantastic. Two of the most likable, contagious people ever. And two people who have a love for Jesus. You're with them and you can see Jesus all over them. People who live it out. They have fostered kids for the last 3-4 years. I mean, you can just see it. It's so evident in their lives that they love Jesus. I want to make it harder than that, but I think it might just be that simple. It might just be two people who have a love for Jesus, a love for life, a love for people, and then just like trying new things and leaning into it. And because it was a restart situation, they had actually had a really hard thing. Long-term pastor had been doing things with girls at camps for years. I mean, like, ugh. And it was public, it was whatever. So I mean, they just went through that trauma, and then they brought in Marty and his family, and he's just kind and soft-hearted, and hey guys, I want to help you heal through this, and we both want to help you heal through this, but we also want to tell people about Jesus. And so I think it was just that. Keep asking questions though. Do you have another one? Anything else?
Go ahead.
No, go with that one.
I was just curious, so I just want to make sure I was understanding right. In the restart, a new church leadership on the ground mixed with you doing the message.
Yep.
And so their time can be freed up to sharing that love of Jesus with all people organically, and then message with you sort of on a weekly basis through technology. Is that right?
It is.
Okay.
And so technology, I really struggled with technology. And multi-site and network stuff, it's constantly changing. So what I would tell you a year ago is different from what I tell you today. When I really struggled just with like the whole celebrity pastor thing of like, you're not even in the room, blah, 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 blah. Like, is this can be used? And I in that season, I met with a guy, and really good guy. So he wasn't trying to be rude, but he just asked, it was the strangest thing because I didn't have an answer until it just came out of my mouth. He's like, do you think the Apostle Paul would preach on a screen? And out of nowhere I said, no, I think he would have probably written letters. And it was just this moment of like, as soon as I said it, I was like, do you just hear yourself? The early Methodists were judged for not having a pastor. They just had some Yahoo show up on a horse that went from place to place to place. And I've always thought like, man, Methodists, like we actually should own the rights to multi-site. Like it's who we are. And one of the coolest things, so when we launched our first campus, I was worried about like depth and whatever. But our T-campus pastor, again, our former executive pastor, who decided to take a step down because he felt called to something, he's my closest friend on staff. If he ever leaves, I'm going to leave right with him. But his heart beats for discipleship. And so it's like now instead of spending 15 to 20 hours on a message, 10 hours, whatever it is, I can spend that with people. Early on, even 2 months in, he's like, I had this weird moment. A guy texted or called me and said, hey, I'm struggling with something. Can we meet right now? And he wrote back and was like, yes, I can. And he's like, that's weird that I can say yes. He's like, in my other position, I would have been like, hey, maybe in 4 weeks. And now he's freed up, so it frees up big time. Something we've switched though. So a year ago, our campus pastors, other than Travis and T, had never preached before. And it was something that really grieved me. It bothered me big time. I'm like, because I'm always like trying to see how I can maximize people and like utilize their passions. And our campus pastors were asking to preach, but I was really unsure. It's like, just quality, like it being a good message, stewardship-wise. I love that you can focus on people instead of a message, and it just gets used at one location. But finally, our executive pastor, she finally just twisted my arm and said, let's just give him a chance. If it's not good, I will lay the smack down and say, you got your one chance, it's done. And so, I mean, Holly is, I mean, she'll tell you, and she's also a person who can tell you the worst news ever and you leave smiling. So I told her, I said, Holly, if I ever am dying, I want you to tell me the news because I'll be like, this sounds like such a good thing. So like, you mean I get to see Jesus sooner? Is that what you're trying to tell me? And so, but we tried it and our attendance went like this, which means the people wanted it. So then we tried it again, and we'll get into that message prep stuff, but we tried it again, and it worked again. What's awesome, though, so sometimes we have a campus pastor Sunday where all the campus pastors are preaching live, but what's so sweet about multi-site, just to brag on it for a second, is if you don't feel like preaching that week, if you have a funeral that comes up, if you have a wedding, if your kid gets sick and has the flu for a month, like, guys, hey, I can't do it this week. No sweat. You got a message coming in. And so it just brings that flexibility. And even for Marty at like the network, he's able to do the same thing. So he could choose to not utilize the message any week. So that's 100% him and his church. So, but long answer.
But follow up kind of on this line of questioning about like that growth. Part of what I think I'm hearing underneath that though is like even in, I mean you said like the shift in that and when you moved was like the Sunday morning, but you already had a pretty heavily, like even your executive pastor had been invited multiple times already.
Yep.
So like part of it was it sounds to me, and tell me if it's wrong, like part of that mix though was like you had a pretty heavily invitational culture. Is that right? I mean, would that be true?
Absolutely.
And so then it was just like getting the right place where that invitation, the right place. I mean, can you tell me a little bit more about? I mean, is that true? And
Oh yeah.
tell me a little bit more about that as part of that.
Yeah.
That's sort of what I hear.
I'll answer it a little bit, and then I'll maybe shift some of it down to the next
Yeah.
part, just to try to keep it separate a little bit.
Yeah.
But definitely an invitational culture, and that I think that starts with us as pastors. You know, we get to plant the seeds, and hopefully it's not all on us, but we get to start that ball rolling, and again, like, to get harsh for a second, oftentimes I feel like pastors are some of the biggest liars I know. Because it's like, on Sundays they get up and the news they share is so-so news. Or it's boring news. Or it's lame news. And where I'm like, the angel shows up, I bring you good news of great joy. A Savior, a Lord has been born today. And I know for myself, it's like, I so badly, me, not even my church, I need a Savior. Like I need at different moments just God to reach down and pull me out of the pit I've gotten myself into. Or just pull me out of worry or fear. And it's like, I need a Lord. Like I'm terrible at calling the shots in my life. I don't know up from down. I think I know what will make me happy. I don't have a clue what will make me happy. And so it's like, when that angel shows up to those shepherds, I'm like on the hill, like, thank you, God. I'm a little scared by all these angels. That's kind of creepy. But thank you, God, you know? And so when we realize that, like, I think when we find that ourselves, that's just contagious. It changes your preaching. It's like, this last week is probably one of the heavier messages I've given in a while. I kept pausing. I'm like, well, this is an upbeat day to come to church. Like, I'm like, someone's party die or something. I just looked at James when he talks about the progression from temptation to sin to death. And that sounds so heavy. And yet death, like spiritual death, probably the church outsider understands that better than the Christian does. It's like death. You don't have to explain death. Pastor, that's why I showed up today. Because I'm miserable. And so often what the church is like, no, you're okay right where you are. No, you didn't hear me. I'm not okay. No, you're okay. God loves you right where you are. No, actually my marriage is falling apart. Like, can you tell me something different? No, you're fine right where you are. No, I can't sleep at night. I don't think you're hearing me, Pastor. Like what they're saying is like, I am dying spiritually, and I've heard that you have some good news to offer me. And so like when we like lean into that, it just happens. So then it's like you see life change. One of the things, and we're not good at this. We're in a season where we don't have a video person. Man, a video person is like, if I could hire like my fourth hire, it'd be like a video person. Just to tell stories. Like even like showing that is so much better than, even though you did an awesome job by leveling it out, by the way. It's fantastic. But even though it was like kind of dark and whatever, even like a subpar video, like it still is like 10 times better than me being like, and there was a strip mall in T that we did. So like sharing stories. But I think just that invitational culture just happens. And when you see a life change, somehow trying to share that. So one of our things that we just started, we're trying to communicate one story of life change every single Sunday. So sometimes that's in a message where I'll share like, and I always ask for permission. Never just go out on a limb. Like if somebody like, man, that will burn bridges quick. Just touch base. Hey, would you mind if I shared? This is exactly what I'm going to share. I'm not going to share any names, nothing specific. Oh, wow, I'd be honored to have you share that. So whether it's in a message, whether it's a video, like if you have baptism Sundays, especially adult baptism Sundays, to try to take a picture of each baptism, because then you can even sprinkle those out throughout the year. Hey, let me introduce you to Sally right here. Sally, like she started coming here 3 months ago, and she shared with me that she was at a really broken place, or she was just kind of looking for purpose. She was at a great place, but just kind of empty. And she came here and she met someone in our first impressions. And it was that person. It wasn't even a message. It was that person who prayed for her out in the entryway that's when she said she felt like she was home. And isn't that, can we just put it up and like thank God for Sally? So just trying to do that, communicate story, even social. Again, get the permission. So after that service, what would be great is on your social. Post Sally's baptism picture, a simple paragraph about Sally. Tag her in it. Now you're like helping her share her story. Again, obviously permission, but just that story culture is huge. Yep. So hopefully that was a good answer. I'm sorry. All over the place. Anything else about our story? This is great.
Could you say more about your leadership and not the plural you? Who you find's working, what works about the church's leaders? I mean, you kind of alluded to it with, when you talked to Matt about Marty and what's making Marty successful there. What are you finding that works in leadership?
In me personally?
Or
Yeah.
plural with the staff of Embrace?
Whew. So I'm trying to think of how to answer this. So we're in a season, honestly, of kind of rebuilding staff-wise, like just to be totally brutally honest. So we had, I think this is a safe place to bare my soul. We had a hard staff transition in July, and it was brutal, and never saw it coming. To quote Carrie Nieuwhof's new book, and so it was hard. So we've had a series of transitions from staff. Which has been really, really, really hard. Thank God, for the most part, church-wise, we are doing well and healthy, but it's been a season of learning. So pray for your staff, pray for your team, pray for your church. It's just, you go through those, and even hearing like what the sign of like me carrying out the sign, God, what am I doing here? And yet, Adam, this is where you're supposed to be. When I talked about needing to hear some of my words, I was like, this Yahoo on the screen is preaching right at this Yahoo over here. So leadership structure, what we learned through that though, your leaders are not who is on the org chart. Your leaders are natural leaders. And so we had our leaders, really the healthy leaders. Our campus pastors are our healthy leaders. And yet they were not in a position to have influence. So we are in correction season. We are getting our campus pastors as the leaders. They are all super healthy. Holly, our executive pastor, is amazing. And so we've really shifted, figure out who your leaders are in your church. I'm taught your people that they follow them, whether they're a secretary or the lead pastor, figure out who those are and try to figure out ways to harness them better. That's something I've figured out. Another thing I had to learn the hard way, it's part of this, I'm not a dictator leader. I'm like the furthest thing from, collaboration is my strong suit. So almost to a default. Through this season, I've actually had a few people say, Adam, you're our pastor, you need to lead us. And I'm such a more of like, what do you guys think? What do you guys think? And through this season, it really bit me in a way. And yet God, I think, honors that and will use that. So I'm kind of going all over the place. One of the things I learned though, one of my most important parts of leadership is just asking a person how they're doing and stopping by their desk and not asking them how they're doing with their position, asking them how they're doing. Like, hey, how's your weekend? And then following up with that. That's something I haven't done well, and I have definitely in a season of correcting that. Adam, it's one thing to not be a jerk, you're not that. But it's another thing to make sure you're pastoring your people. So not just not being negative, because the negative part of me is not me, but also making sure you're doing the positive part on it as well. And I'm so much my father's son. My dad's an electrician before his health issues. And my dad is the most highly relational person you'll ever meet. But I can remember the few summers I wired houses with him. He'd show up at a person's house, and if the person was really talkative, you could see him get anxious. He's like, internally thinking to himself, I just want to wire your outlet. It's like, you're paying me to have chit chat right now, which made him feel even worse. He's like, I feel greasy because you're paying me for this. And I'm the same way. Oftentimes my default, I get to the office and I go to my office. instead of taking that time to like, nope, Adam, like as a part of your salary, it is so vital that you just stop by and ask each of the staff people how they're doing, and try to grab coffee with them once a semester or once a quarter, just to grab coffee with them, not to grab coffee and strategize, but just to grab coffee with them. That's the part that I'm learning leadership-wise. Also trying to figure out, my job is constantly changing. I always say I've never led a church of 500 until I did. I had never led a church to 1,000 until I did. I had never led a church of 2,000. I had never led a multi-site church. So everything has been learning. Stuff I don't know, I love Asbury. We didn't learn any of that. Like, hey, when you hit 500 in worship, here's the new challenges. 1,000 people in worship, this is what's going to kill you in the night. 2,000 in worship, here's what's going to drown you. Like, you just didn't have those things. And so you just constantly are learning. And so I'm in the season of, this is what I'm learning about myself. I have very few strengths. My strength is my work ethic. I can work like a dog. And a lot of that, by the grace of God, combined with the work like a dog, has gotten embraced where it is. But I'm seeing the shift that needs to take place of, I need to start leading. Like, I need to really lead. We got to a few thousand in worship, whatever it is. Like, I need to lead now. And so I need to let campus pastors make decisions. Like, speak into them, give them 2 cents, and then let them go. And if they fail, awesome. Come back. Hey, let's regroup. Try that again. Right now, even service times are where I preach from. I'm not crazy about the service times, and yet I haven't shared that with the campus pastor. You know, I've shared. I'm like, hey, like he asked me he said, what do you think you would do? And I said, I'd probably move it this and this. And he's like, really? And I said, yeah. I was like, I think I probably would. But I said, Brian, this is your campus. I'm just the guy who gets to show up and preach. And so, like, you need to figure that out. And he's a person that's responsible. He feels that weight. So I don't need to tell him about the weight. I don't need to tell him what he's doing. That just undercuts his leadership. I just need to let him figure it out on his own. And if he comes for feedback, I'll share it. And I know he's closely watching things and trying to figure out how it works. And that's been a season for me of just like hands off and just seeing how that goes. Speaking into things, I'm a coach, so during the game, I always say a coach never waits till the end of a game to say, hey, do you realize that point guard has been dropping threes all night long? Like, he's just been draining them there. Like, every time he's in the corner, he's going to hit that three. He's just waiting for it. So coach during the game of saying, hey, someone might want to get down on number 33. Like, he's going to drop that three every time. And so, but at the same time, letting people figure it out on their own. I'm not sure if that helps or not. So I'm naturally a doer. I need to start leading. And that's what I've been really this past year figuring out more and more and more. And I'm growing. And so seeking out mentors who can help speak into that, reading books that can speak into that, just even asking God to speak into that. Seeking out business leaders even. Hey, how do you do this? One of my best friends is one of the top realtors in Sioux Falls. He now has 15 people underneath him. And he just said, Adam, at some point I need to take my hands off the wheel. And that's really hard, especially as a founder, especially as the owner in his case. But he's like, you got to if you want to keep growing. So, did I answer your question though?
Yeah.
Get more specific if you have another question.
Just the follow-up of that is, what do you see as helping you multiply? What leadership qualities on the ground as well from your people? For those of us who don't have people, what's helping with multiplication?
Doing less. So doing less so people can actually do more. Instead of being spread so thin that they're doing 17 things really, really bad. So starting from the top, you have to make sure you're leading that. Instead of getting the new shiny toy every week that you throw at your staff in a different direction, setting out the agenda, here is where we're going this year, and let's just do this really, really well. And so then talking about it, then giving teachings on it. So like this next year, we're going to focus on 4 things as a church. We're getting back to the very basics. We're going to focus on guests. We're going to focus on groups. We're going to focus on students. And we're going to focus on buildings. And those are the 4 things. Like, I want everything to revolve around those 4 things. So just intentionality. So what are we measuring? This year we're going to measure the amount of first-time guests. Instead of just attendance, we're going to measure first-time guests. We're going to mention people getting connected in groups. We're going to mention first-time guests in kids area, and we're going to measure volunteers. And so then pouring it into people so they know how to reproduce themselves. Here's what this looks like. Do the people know their why? Like just for our volunteers, we're not hopefully telling them just flip this switch or shake this person's hand. What we're ultimately hoping is that that person would come to know Jesus or that person would grow in their love for Jesus. And then again, sharing stories. So it's like, hey, I just want to let you know, guys, this is one of the stories that came in by email this week. Can I just read this to you? It's reminding them of their why constantly and then just pouring into them. So something we've started in the last 6 months, we now have a weekly all-staff meeting. So there's 30 some of us that are together. The St. Croix team is via video on a screen that everybody else drives to there. And we have a business person coming to teach us just like a 10, 15-minute talk to our team about productivity and how to use your time. And so that will be a talk that I'll be taking notes the entire time too. Like, man, it's Rick Melmer. Rick is one of the top-notch guys in our area. He knows so much. And so I just want to learn from Rick about how to use your time wisely and also about priorities in your life, not just as a staff person, but as a human being. Rick's been the Secretary of Education for South Dakota. I mean, has had a lot of high titles. And yet more than that, I think he's been an incredible husband. One of his daughters is one of my best friends from high school. And so he's been an incredible dad. And so I want to learn, like, what does Rick know about how to juggle all this? Almost back to your question about how to juggle all of it. And so it's a teaching time as well. So I think kind of laying out the why, just pouring into them, letting them develop a game plan. So how can we get people connected in large groups? I just encourage you to brainstorm about how to do that. Okay, so you've got some ideas. Now let's get a group of 4 or 5 people together, some staff, some people from the church. What do they think about what could people get into large groups? How can we do this? How can we do this? We're going to do 2 different large groups this fall. We need this many leaders, like just kind of walking through things with them. I'm trying to think of how to lay it out even clearer, but explain the why. The why is critical. We're not just doing this to keep our church alive for another year. That's not a good why. I don't care about this church staying around for another year. No, the why is we've been entrusted with the greatest news that's ever been told. And so I think just starting with that and then just pouring into them and just if there's a book in that area, you should really read this book. Read this book and then let's connect. And I'd love to find 5 ideas that we can implement from that book. So different things like that is what we do a lot of times. Or even if there's a podcast. Craig Rochelle's got great podcasts. Carrie Newhoff, man, I love Carrie. Carrie's stuff is so good. I feel like it works so well, even in the Methodist church. It does. Like he just gets a lot of the weird stuff that I feel like Methodists have. And so he just really practical advice too through Carrie. So yeah, it's just learning. Nobody's got a crystal ball. And the game's changing so fast in church world, in every world. And so it's just constant learning. Even Carrie's still learning. I know he is. And so, he's just trying to figure it out too. So he's talked to me. Hey, Adam, what works? What's not working in your denomination? So I can share. And so it's been cool that way.
Could you talk a little bit more about staff meetings and how those are structured? Some of the advice our church has gotten recently is actually to cut back on the amount of time that we hold our staff in staff meetings to kind of maximize the time that they have for ministry. And
Yes.
Can you help me understand how you made this switch to more staff meetings?
Yeah, and we actually probably have the fewest amount of staff meetings we've had. So we try the same way, ruthlessly cut back. But we have an all-staff meeting every Tuesday. So it's today at 9 o'clock. And actually today we're not having it because we didn't have anything we felt like we needed to communicate, so we didn't have it. We don't want to waste people's time. And so we shared that last week. Hey guys, we were going to have a speaker that was going to come in and share. Last minute that wasn't able to work. And we want to use your time wisely, so we're not just going to throw together a crappy meeting that everybody knows you're just pulling something out of your rear end. We're we're just going to not have all staff, and we'll see you next Tuesday, and it's going to be solid. So we started that. We constantly are looking for ways to switch it up. So once a month we have a leadership talk in there. So someone will give a leadership talk, how to recruit volunteers, how to care for your team, how to I'm just trying to think, how to step into a new season, so they're different talks, and your people, you'll be blown away by your people. 2 weeks ago, we had an admin assistant talk and one of our part-time groups people talk. 2 ladies who are very quiet, never been on a stage in their life. By the end of both of them, I was blown away. It was 2 of the best talks I've ever heard, ever. And we got done, and I literally was like, can we just clap again? Like, that was amazing. I was like, where have you people been? And so just giving people a chance to share and giving them a chance to share in advance. So a typical meeting, they'll come in. Again, Holly's on the screen. So our executive pastor, crazy enough, lives in Nashville, a little outside the box. And she's amazing. So Holly, her husband is used to be on the Dave Ramsey team. Chris Brown is his name. So it's Holly. So Holly's amazing. So what's this?
I'm a Dave Ramsey stalker.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, Chris is wonderful. So Holly is on a screen. Our St. Croix team's on a screen because they're 4 hours away. So we'll get together. Hey, guys, we're going to pray. Celebration time. So where have you seen God move this past week? Celebration time. And what we found, at first, we just opened it up, and we did that for a few months. And then it kind of got same old, same old, same old, same old. So one of our campus pastors, who's now kind of co-helping me plan meetings, in advance, he asked 3 people each week, hey, would you mind sharing about how God's moved in your life lately? So it's not just spur of the moment. It gives them a chance just to prep a little bit. And that's where like those 2 gals that got up, they just crushed it. I mean, seriously, I almost cried just thinking about it. One of the ladies is like, and this isn't something I normally share with people. I just want to show you a picture of my mom. I didn't even know about her. She ended up sharing to our whole staff. So celebration time, and then if we have a leadership talk, every meeting we have a wheel that we spin, and whoever it lands on has to come up. So it might be kids area, it might be youth, it might be executive team, it might be whatever. Whoever it is needs to come up, and there's also a free meal on there. And there's there's one that says like pick someone else. So if it lands on you, you get to pick who it is. So it adds fun to it. So then you have to come up, and so the talk on leadership. How are you? Like one of the talks we did is how to gain buy-in with your team. So how do you get buy-in with your team? How do you get buy-in with your team? So whoever it landed on. So then there's accountability to it. It's like I better put in place what we heard about. Not because I have to and it's gonna be horrible. There's none of that. But I'm going to be put on the spot, and it could land on me. So the last 2 weeks, when it comes to buy-in, I've met with each of my team people, and I've just asked them, like, how can I gain buy-in? Like, what does it look like for me to gain buy-in? And they shared this and this, and I didn't even realize that I was doing these 2 things, but that's an area that I'm really trying to intentionally work on. So we have the wheel time, we'll have a communicate time. So we have the marriage event coming up. So, hey guys, this week, so it's communication time about anything. And then there's the talk, whatever the talk is. So the talk might be around vision, might be a leadership talk, might be our next series. So anytime I have a series, the week before, I just do like kind of a devotional time of the series with our staff. And that I got to get my crap in the group too. So, hey guys, this next series is called The 5 Things That Will Kill Your Relationships. That's what we're doing after this series. And so I just wanted to for the series, we're going to be jumping into this scripture. And so I've given all of you the scripture, and I just want to walk through like what God's already been laying on my heart. And then all of a sudden for our team, instead of like telling our team, hey, go invite people. Instead of telling our team, go invite people, go invite people, go invite people, you tell them the heart of the message series, and they're like, I want everybody to be at this series. This is going to be life-changing. And so then it creates this fire in them. So there's no more like, go invite people. people are coming up to me like, I'm going to invite my dad. I'm going to tell all our volunteers about this, about that. Oh my goodness, so it just creates that. And then we end with prayer. Sometimes it changes. Sometimes we do a game. So like we're in a series right now called Movies from the 80s. And so it started out the week that I did kind of the layout of the series, we did an 80s trivia. And whatever team won got a pizza party that week. So it's like, actually it was an 80s pizza party. And someone said, what's an 80s pizza party look like? And I said, pizza with 80s music playing. So, but all of a sudden the competitiveness came out though, and it was fun. And our oldest person on staff, I think she's like 45, 46. And it was so funny because she gets heckled all the time. Everybody heckles her like, well, Kimberly was alive then, or like all this kind of crap. Well, it was so funny. All of a sudden, Kimberly became, everybody wanted Kimberly. Especially like our 23-year-old whoever on our team who wasn't even alive during the 80s. We're like, you're worthless. Like, Kimberly, everybody wants Kimberly, you know? And Kimberly's literally like, next, like what question next? And then the young punks are like, yeah, I've never even heard of, you know. So then it just creates fun atmosphere too. So sometimes we'll play a game, worship. Sometimes we'll just do a meal. One of our values is on our knees. So sometimes when we're praying, we'll just get on our knees during that time and just ask God what his plan is and ask him to speak. So, but is any of this beneficial? Okay, I'm sorry.
How long do you take doing that?
It's an hour.
An hour?
Yep, and if it gets done earlier, awesome. Again, don't just fill time and fill space, because then people will know, like, this is something I don't want to miss. Another thing that's super simple, and people would be willing to do this, you'd be shocked. We haven't started doing this, but I'm going to start Skyping in friends to, like, meet with our team. And if they're in town, then obviously I'll bring them. But, you know, like a Carrie, I can't probably afford to bring Carrie to an all-staff meeting, but I can ask him, would he be willing to Skype? And how awesome would that be? To hear, like, hey, Carrie, like, have him pour into your team, love on your team. And whether it's a Carrie Newhoff or it's another pastor in the denomination or whatever, most people are just humbled to be asked. Especially if it's like, hey, you don't have to even share, or just tell us 3 things you're learning right now. I could do that in my sleep. I feel like God's teaching me so much. I'm so simple he needs to. And so just those types of things too. But try to make it all, really plan into it. And so the guy that kind of helps co-lead with me, he's at our Sertoma campus, and he's just very, very scheduled. So have somebody like that if you're more loosey-goosey like this Yahoo is, where it's like, I'll just kind of show up, hey, what's happening? Oh, sweet. Where Travis is like, do we know what we're talking about yet? And I'm like, ooh, that's right. Plan ahead. Okay. I see what you're saying. So have somebody like that to co-help you. Or if you are that plan ahead person and it's going to be terribly boring, find someone who's carefree and is like, we need to just have something fun. We need to read the room. Also a great chance just to walk through a part of your vision statement. Like, what's your values? Like, values. Try to drop that in. Who are you? Try to constantly share that. So if I have any stories about the next person for Jesus that's come through, you better believe I'm sharing it in there. Like, hey guys, I just got this cool text message. Can I just read this to you? And people are just like, oh my goodness, just that why, the why, the why, the why. This isn't just a job. If this is just a job, gosh, man. So, do you have another one?
Well, that sounds incredible. I'm trying to figure out in my head how you fit it into an hour.
It's so cool is to have that, and instead of it being too long and people are like, oh my goodness, maybe even shoot for 45 minutes. Leave me wanting more. I was like, that was great. I don't want it to end. Oh, but guys, have a great week. We're going to pray. It's like, what? No, more of her. Have her share more. Nope, she can't share anymore. You know what I mean? It's like, when you have that, instead of it being like, everybody knows this should have ended 30 minutes ago, just cut it off, like, keep it tight and just plan ahead and delegate ownership. So let someone share. Again, make sure you have healthy people sharing. Make sure they're at a good place and they're loving working on your team. Otherwise, it could turn into a sob story that's not cool. But if you have a healthy person, your youth person, hey, would you mind giving a talk? So a perfect example. Our number 2 at our T campus under Travis, her name's Kimberly. She's the best at getting volunteers. Their kids area always has way more volunteers than you ever need. No kidding. She's the best. Who do I want to hear from about volunteers? Kimberly Gass. I don't want to hear from me. Are you kidding me? Kimberly, she's our expert in-house. Better than Carrie Newhoff. So Kimberly, hey, would you mind sharing on stage? I don't know about that. Like, no, Kimberly, seriously, you'd be awesome. I'm not really sure. No pressure. But if you feel like, Kimberly, you just have this gift. And so then she came, and the first thing she said is, I've been up since 1 o'clock this morning. She literally didn't sleep. She was so nervous. But her talk was so good. She gave these nuggets of gold that I didn't even know about. Because it's like, she's like, what do you mean? What should I tell about? Whatever you do to get this many volunteers. What is it? Just tell us that. Well, I don't. And here's the thing. Yeah, put it in a bottle so we can drink it. But it's so cool though, those heroes that you have in your midst will never know they're heroes. And they'll also not be able to tell you the secret sauce. It's almost like, why did it double from 1 to 300? I almost struggle because it's like so normal for me in that area that you could just like, I don't really know what it is. We'll dissect it. So what Travis, our Sertoma campus pastor, did with Kimberly was, hey, can we just meet up? And he just asked her questions because she didn't know the answer, even though she lived out the answer. And then he helped like, oh my goodness, Kimberly, you share those 4 things. That's it. Just cut it off there. And so she did, and it was dynamite. And then to see her, Kimberly, yeah.
She's only 41.
Is she 41? Do you know she's 41? She's our oldest staff person. She's our oldest full-time staff person. We have 2 part-times that are a little bit older. But Kimberly always says they don't count because they're part-time. I think silently she loves being the oldest person.
You said about constantly learning, and you talked about reading and podcasts. So who are you reading? What are you reading? Who are you listening to?
Great question. So right now I'm reading Carrie's new book. So I'm reading that. I'm also reading, I wish I had my bag, The Cultural Code. I don't even know who that is. It's a secular business book. It's been really, really good because our culture this summer was not good as a staff. And so I'm learning. So again, the people on stage at anything, they have nothing figured out, just so you know. Very few of them do. So I'm reading that book as well. Those are my 2 like learning books. Podcasts, everything from Craig Groeschel. I mean, his stuff is so tight. It's like 20 minutes. You can find 20 minutes. And even if it's a different culture from whatever, you can take something from it. And even if you don't like Craig, like, I don't care. He's still got some things to teach you. And I think even just us as Methodists, the person on the other side of the line theologically, blah, 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 you have something to learn from them. So cut out your ego and all your crap and just humble yourself and learn. And so I think just even when I sit down with someone, even in Sioux Falls, that I know is crushing it in a certain area, I'll just tell them like, hey, can you tell me what you're doing in there? Like, what are you doing in there? What's that about? So I try to meet up with a bunch of people too and just ask them their thoughts, especially in this season of like coming out of this wonky season. I've probably asked more questions than ever before. Is there anything that you see in me, even just kind of studying myself almost? So yeah, anything, Carrie and Craig are probably my 2 main people podcast-wise and then pastor-wise, area preaching is always something I'm growing in. Pastors I love to listen to. Bob Merritt from Eagle Brook is incredible. John Weiss from Southland Christian in Kentucky is awesome. I also really appreciated Judah Smith. So I think Judah is one of the best preachers of our time. And so just seeing what he's doing and just listening to him, none of those 3 preachers are anything like me. which I love. So I'm not listening to people that I think are like me. I'm listening to people who are different from me. And then honestly, Holly on our staff is so dynamite. She's preaching this week, and I learned from her so much. Yeah, I'm so grateful for Holly. So just finding out who those people are and learning from them. Anytime, with Holly, I honestly feel like I'm learning more from her than she could ever learn from me. So it's a great way to feel that way about your team. Yep.
Question for you. Your bishop comes to you and says, we have a new assignment for you.
Yeah.
You're going to be pastoring a church that was planted in 1843. It's got a pipe organ. It's got chancel choir, sanctuary,
Yeah.
down pews. Where do you start?
So,
2019.
yeah.
Okay.
Bishop O, I think I'm retiring. No. So again, like the soil is so much harder in those circumstances. I'm going to answer the question a couple different ways. First off, I'd keep my eyes on churches that are doing the exact same thing. The church that I see it doing it in a lot of different ways, slightly different, is HTB Church, Nicky Gumbel's church, where Alpha started in London. That's one of my favorite churches in the world. I've drank the Alpha Kool-Aid completely. We're trying to bring our entire church through Alpha. The new content's unbelievable. So we have hundreds of people right now going through Alpha at Embrace. So what I would do in that setting is I would try to get a couple wins. I would get wins any way I could get wins. And I'd also honor the people currently as much as I could, like by the grace and strength and courage and love of Jesus in my heart, to like honor the admin board, because in a lot of those, the admin board have become the boss of the church. I always say for a good lead team person, it's a person who does not want to be on the lead team. Anybody who asks to be on the lead team, it's almost like Fight Club, you know? Anybody who asks to be on the lead team automatically is not a good fit for the lead team. I want to find people who are so busy being used by God as well that I have to drag them into the position, instead of them having an ego trip and whatever else. And even a difference of finding people who crush it in their workplace and then all of a sudden become the most faithless people ever inside the church. I never thought I'd be a pastor. I always thought I'd be a business leader, and especially to the fellas, I just challenge them. I'm like, what I feel like I'm hearing is you have more faith in your company than you do in the body of Christ. Woe to you. Like, man, you have more stock in your little company that's expanding at rapid rate, and then you get to church and you're Mr. Conservative that doesn't want to do anything? Are you kidding me? That sounds like burying a talent in the sand. And so, but looking for ways to serve them and trying to see what you can get by them. As far, what I mean by is, hey, we're not going to go to all contemporary services, but would you mind if I started a service at 11 a.m.? Would you mind if I started a service then? It's not going to mess with the first two that we already have. Would you mind if I did then? So trying to figure out what they will be okay with. Well, Adam, I can't preach 3 times on a Sunday. Yes, you can. I preach 4 times every single Sunday. Some weeks I preach 5 times. With Christmas, I preach 10 times. I can't preach 5 times every week, but I can preach 4 every week. And so trying to figure out again, like, would you guys be okay if I did an 11 o'clock service? It's not going to cost the church anything. If it does, maybe there's one person in the church who's a go-getter. Would you mind giving like $5,000 to just help me do some things in the sanctuary? Just a little bit. Well, what do you mean? Between the services, we're going to transform the sanctuary. Well, you can't do that. Yeah, you can. Get a few volunteers. I think we just like sell ourselves shorts. And again, I'm speaking out of ignorance, so take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. You can shoot me and slash my tires of my car that I don't have out here. So, but trying to figure out what you can be okay with. Like, would you be okay with an 11 o'clock service? Would you be okay? So for that service, just trying that. The first time you get a win, sharing the win. The first time you get a story, sharing the story. Hopefully, by the grace of God, it's not a person on the board losing a kid to a drug overdose. That's the story. Hopefully, it's the kid whose daughter's struggling with drugs. Her life gets turned around is the story. God can use either of those, unfortunately. But all of a sudden, it's the lady from St. Croix Valley. I'm not concerned with any of our walks with Jesus, but I'm so concerned about my daughter's walk with Jesus. You get one person like that, then you can start doing some changes. And so then, like, even for like a service, then, like, is there a way of doing like what's being done? But for that 11 o'clock service, you call the series. My movies from the 80s series, it sounds topical and shallow. It's probably the most in-depth series we've done. I mean, we hopped into the book of James, and I challenged everybody to read the book of James. Pastor, that's not deep enough. Did you read the book of James? No, I didn't. Okay, then you're not deep enough. Like, people who want deep enough usually just want big fancy words thrown at them. And man, that deep enough question, holy cats, that gets me fired up, you know? Like, oh geez, that's one of the trips my trigger. You know, I'm like, no. So I think so what it is, so like during the first two services, it's just a message from James chapter 1, and for the 11 o'clock, it's movies from the 80s, and we're going to jump into James chapter 1. And so just figuring out what you can, that's why I'd probably just look for little wins, and then just honor as much as you can. Don't be a punk. At different times I've wanted to be a punk. Even with conference leadership, I was 24, so maybe that's an excuse to be a punk, but there was definitely a punk inside of me for a while, where I just was like, you don't know what you're talking about, you know, and now I'm just a lot slower to speak, because it's like, I don't have any clue what I'm talking about. So just making sure you're honoring, but I think that's what I would do. And then, Lord willing, there's fruit, and there's fruit, and there's fruit, and there's fruit, and hopefully it brings the church together instead of bringing it apart. But I don't know what happens at that point. Just seeing fruit there, and man, the old buildings, even in the area here, I'm like, man, I want to quit my job and move out here, because just the buildings, I mean, like, yeah. Well, it's just true. Like, I just think about, like, that's what HTB Church, take all the pews out, put lights on the walls and light it up. I mean, it's beautiful. And God doesn't need museums. And really, when you just, like, I just think we forget about why we went to seminary. Did we, like, go to seminary to be yacht, like, managers, cruise line people? I didn't. I honestly, even through this last summer, I'm like, can I just go in the business world again? Like, and do that? Because I'd much rather do that. No, I want to be used to tell people about Jesus. And these big buildings, they're not that old. They're 200 years old. Are you kidding me? They were just put up a couple of weeks ago. You know what I mean? Like, we were so weird. It's been there forever. No, it hasn't. It wasn't there 200 years ago. And so just our mindset is so weird. And I think just keeping that Wesleyan spirit. Like, I decided to become vile to save more souls. Man, I hope that be true of me. Not because I'm trying to be a renegade. I don't want to be a renegade, but because it's so important. Our task is so important. And so if it peeves off our biggest giver, I'm so sorry. If I got to have a conversation with my DS, I'm so sorry. Like, and again, not because I'm trying to be a punk, but because I'm trying to be faithful, you know? So even in church, this is a tangent for a second. I just think about my daughter if she was drowning. She's 7 years old. She's the sweetest thing ever. What would I want people to do to reach her? Anything. Anything. And there are so many people drowning spiritually. Well, that's a little intense, Adam. No, look at the suicide rate. It's actually not intense. That's a little intense, Adam. No, look at the drug rate. It's not intense. Look at this rate. Look at this rate. Look at this rate. It's like, I'm like, I just pray if it was my daughter, we'd do anything. And yet so often it's like, well, we got to make sure it doesn't upset people. And I'm like, man, my daughter's drowning. So I just want to tell her I don't want to be a punk. So I think the heart is the biggest thing. Because if you're a punk, first off, God's not going to get behind it. So you're going to try something and it's going to fail miserably. But if it's like, really, Lord, I want to honor you. I want to serve you. I just want to be used by you. I think God will use that. So
It's helpful, because one of the biggest challenges I think we face, we have 880 congregations? 850. We used to have 880 4 years ago. Congregations across our end of the conference, we haven't eclipsed 1,000 in worship.
yeah,
You're talking about numbers that now we see
Yeah.
churches in our area,
yep,
the LCBCs,
Yep.
use the the alphabet you want to for the churches that are doing it.
Yeah.
But we're not doing it.
Yeah.
You have the same brand,
Yeah.
you know, same flavor, but it's working.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting here struggling going, okay, what's missing?
Yeah.
It's not our theology. I agree with Adam Hamilton. We've got the theology that
Oh.
it needs. We've got the message. What is it that's missing? You know, and that's why I gave you, that's a real example of the church I'm sort of
Yeah.
planted in 1843. You know?
Yep. So I think even reprogramming our brain of what's possible. So like that third service, it is possible. You can do it. You can change between the second and third service clothes. Really? Like, you think I should actually change my clothes? I think you should. Like just some of those things that I think we just set as like, I can't do that, I can't do that, I can't do that. Yeah, you can. Now you're becoming the board that you're trying to fight against is actually yourself. And so I think just like, I mean, even for us, some of the hard decisions. So one of the things we did this summer, we killed Vacation Bible School. We don't do it anymore. Of a church that's made up of young families, I thought that was the worst. I'll be honest, that was not. That was a Holly decision where she just smiles at you as she's throwing stuff at you and you're like, this feels so nice. But like, we did it and like, this is a praise God like moment. We went from 800, the most kids we've ever had at Vacation Bible School, to just under 2,000 kids. For just a decision, like that's a bold move. What if it would have failed? What if it would have failed? Then we try again. So I think just thinking about those things. Even a buddy of mine planted the Branches. It's a Methodist church in Indiana. His name's Alex Hershey. I went to school with Alex. He was a bald dude with glasses. I thought he was so cool. And so what I seriously did, I wanted to be Alex Hershey's buddy in seminary. He listened to records on a record player. I thought that was cool. I like typewriters. And so he planted a church a few years back, and he just asked, he's like, hey, do you have any tidbits? And I said, I went to your website, and it says the Reverend Alex Hershey. I'm like, who's that weird stiff? Like, get rid of like, if you think it will reach people, keep it. If it doesn't, get rid of it. Like Alex, you're Alex. You're not weird. What the heck is a rev? And so, like, I think just like even like thinking and humbling ourselves, like, what is that? I would encourage you, be the person God has called you to be. So we have a Methodist conference next Friday and Saturday at Embrace. The conference is putting it on, and I'm talking about being authentic. Just be who God has called you to be. I'm like, Alex, be the cool guy that I want to be friends with because I'm drawn to the Jesus inside of you. Be that person, and I'll come to your church, even if I haven't been to your church in a long time. So I think sometimes it's those subtle things and trying to get some of the religious talk out of our language even. So one of our campus pastors at our broadcast campus, his name's Brian. We just hired him from Eaglebrook. It's one of the best hires we've ever had. Eaglebrook's a church of 30-some thousand. They had over like 50 or 60,000 for Easter. And his first job there, he had 700 volunteers underneath him. So kind of talking about like numbers that I can't register. I can't register any of that. I'm like, I don't even know what that looks like. So he's just able to do some things. So even one of our values, and we'll get to this in a second, is in all things we consider the first-time guest. So that's one of our values. He has pushed that so far. So at the start of our service, we've never done this until Brian. Hey guys, I just want to let you know, I just want to welcome you. My name's Brian. And if you're here today, we're going to sing a few songs. We'd never say this in the past, by the way. We're going to sing a few songs. The words are going to be on the screen. And so if you feel like you'd like to sing with us, we'd love to have you sing with us. If you just want to sit there and observe, that's totally cool as well. After we sing a few songs, Adam, our lead pastor, he's going to come up and we're in a series right now called Movies from the 80s. Anybody like the 80s? I love the 80s too. And so he's going to come up and share that. But at this time, we're just going to turn and just kind of say hello to people around us. We encourage everybody to give a high five and make it pop. So that's his campus pastor part. I mean, he's telling everything. He's speaking that language. Something I'll never forget, my first annual conference was in Bismarck, North Dakota, okay? Yeah, seriously. Pray for North Dakotans. I don't know if they have a heart or a soul. Like the cold weather has like killed it somehow. My wife's from North Dakota. I love North Dakota. Anyways, I was at annual conference for 2 hours. This is kind of embarrassing. I went to my car and I cried. because I felt so out of place. I felt so unwelcomed. I didn't even feel like I knew what they were talking about. Like it was like this foreign place. I'm like, I feel so awkward here. I didn't know how to handle it, so I just went and cried. And I'm like, that's how our first time guests feel. It's like, what, are we on a different planet here? Like, I don't even understand what this guy's saying. What did she say again? I don't even know, what is she wearing? What is that? Like, and so I think just those basic things that we take for granted, I think that's why. So you see an LCBC church, they're just doing things. And you might disagree with how they do it, but they're just trying to meet people right where they are. And actually, I think Paul and Jesus did the same thing. Paul at Mars Hill, I honestly think his talk at Mars Hill, I probably wouldn't let him talk at my church again. Like, that's just and I'm like, that convicts me. Why would I not do that? He quotes a pagan philosopher. Well, you might want to throw a Bible verse in there, Paul. You know, like, so like, I mean, he is speaking their language. And so even with these video clips, it's like taking something that the people know and love, warm fuzzies. Even when we showed like the clip from E.T., I got this warm, I love E.T. I'm like, I was sad when I found out E.T. wasn't real. It's so like, and then connecting E.T. with your life. Like every time that comes up, people are going to think to themselves, we connected with Philippians, my home's in heaven. Like, I don't belong here. And so it's just happening. So I think it's just utilizing those things instead of all that churchiness. Like the churchiness, if it can reach people, use it. So if a hymn reaches people, don't use anything modern. Use it. So just use it. I think that's what churches are doing. They're just not playing by the rules. Like they cancel VBS, and the lead pastor didn't want to. Me. And I love that we did. It was the best decision we've made. So then we'll do Ninja Camp. We'll probably do it for 2 years, maybe 3 years, and then we'll kill that because it doesn't work anymore. So like even movie nights in Sioux Falls, sometimes it's just about striking when the iron's hot and you see an opportunity just to go for it. So our movie nights used to be huge deals. And then 3-4 years into it, almost every church was doing a movie night. And so it lost its edge, and then all of a sudden it was just embrace people that were coming. Well, that wasn't a success for us. We did it, yes, for embrace people. My kids went every single time. But we did it for my kids as friends at school. That's why we did it. That's what a win was for us. So.
Adam, thank you.
Uh,
Could I ask you to rewind
yeah.
just a tad bit?
Yeah.
We're anxious to hear what you did differently at Vacation Bible School.
Okay, so I'm going all over the place. Is this okay?
Great.
Okay, so what did we do with Vacation Bible School?
You said you stopped Bible school.
Yeah.
And
So
you grew.
yeah. So what we did. What was this?
So that angle, that's not
Well, more magic, 800 to 2,000. So we were just curious, like, can you unpack that? Just a
Yes.
little bit?
Find a felt need. That's it. Like, find a need. What do people need? Marriages are struggling. Talk about marriage. Kids want to go to camp, but they're kind of expensive. Becky and I even like to put our kid in flag football. It's expensive. Like, we have to take money out of savings. It's not just like, oh, just write a check and pay for flag football. So it's finding a felt need and then just trying to offer it. So VBS, what we found was we were really ministering to a bunch of church kids from other churches. That's not success for us. Yes, we want to minister to those kids. That's my 4 kids. So we care about those 4 kids. The day that I don't care about my 4 kids, it's just not reality. It's like, no, I would move heaven and earth for my kids. So we care about our kids that are here, but we want to tell kids that aren't here about Jesus. And so we just started thinking, it's like, man, we're just reshuffling kids. I was the stick in the mud on this decision. I mean, I was your board that like, we've never done this. We're like, why are we trying to kill our young families? That's what I felt. I'm like, this is who we are. You can't just like take an axe to the root. I'm like, what are you doing? And but it was like, no, just take a chill, Weber. And so Holly, again, just so perfectly, she's like, I just think like if you offer something that kids want to go to, they're just going to want to go to it. And they're going to start begging their family, begging their kids, begging whatever. And so she's like, I think we should do like, first it was like a sports camp. So there was gonna be a sports camp or a music camp. My oldest is music, so he's not into sports. And so trying to figure out what to do there, and it's like, gosh, that just feels harder. And then all of a sudden it was like, what about a ninja camp? Just a day ninja camp. And I was like, oh my goodness, Holly Brown is brilliant. I mean, as soon as she said it, I was like, that's it, that's gonna work. So what we did was and not everybody can do this. So what we did was we made curriculum for a day, just a day, not even 24 hours, 6 hours. So we built a ninja course. This is utilizing, oftentimes, here's what's so cool. This is what I love about construction projects, especially for guys. Guys often feel like they don't have a place when it comes to volunteering. Me in your kids area, if you see me in your kids area, called child services. He seems like he has a very good heart but I'm just concerned about him. He seems shady. I'll call the cops on me. But you have all these guys that are wanting to serve that just don't have a place. Gals that are wanting to serve that just don't have a place. So it's like, hey, would you want to build a ninja course for us? You see these guys just step up, these gals step up to the plate and just go to town. So we built a ninja course. We built it on Joshua. Story of Joshua was the storyline for the day. And kids that signed up in campus by campus, we did this differently. In the town of T, which runs like 450 on a Sunday, every kid who signed up had a ninja show up to the house to drop off their gear. Nice. So they got a shirt, they got a water bottle, they got something else. This is the first year we did charge. It was $10, but we said any kid. We made it so strong. If money's an issue for us, we had 5-10 families that were like, we'll write thousands of dollars of checks to cover kids. So if there's a parent that even hesitates and doesn't even ask, pay their way. So we just did that, and I mean, it was just like a grass fire. So we had 5 campuses, so we just did one a Saturday, and we moved it. So for Minnesota, we got a flatbed trailer, loaded it all up on there, and now our Minnesota campus is using the ninja stuff in the kids area. So that was it. And what happened was our first week was our smallest week, and we thought this would happen. And what was awesome, it just became a wildfire. The next 3 weeks in a row, we had to close the door, which is like the worst thing ever. It's like, but we have no more room. And we wanted to make it a good experience for the kids that did come. So there was campuses, one campus like 3 weeks out, shut off registration, which sucks. This next year we'll be prepared for it. We just didn't think it'd be like that. And then though, the biggest success bar though, is this is the win part. Not just that we got a bunch of kids there, okay, how are we getting them connected with the church? So does it translate? So that's what so we didn't have a campus pastor at our broadcast campus during that season. Brian he was on his way, but was still finishing up. And we did not capitalize on that well. And so we dropped the ball, but at T, it just exploded. I mean, their kids area, now we're trying to build them a building because they've maxed out their entire thing. I'd say because of Ninja Camp.
You talked about, doing things like changing clothes between services and, having your name presented in such a way that might be more effective for reaching different people.
Yeah, just simple stuff, yep.
In order to do that, and kind of what Bruce was saying, in order to do that, sometimes we might have to back off and stop doing some things that we think are helpful.
Yep.
Are there things over the course of time as you've grown that you said, you know what, we used to think this was a really valuable thing for us to do, but we actually don't need to do that? Not necessarily because you've grown so large, but you can't necessarily hire somebody to do everything.
Yep.
But maybe you could quit doing something that isn't producing results that you thought it might be.
Yeah, so we're kind of jumping in the outreach part, and that's okay. Most things we end up killing. So one of my jobs is always to find every sacred cow and try to kill it, try to tackle it and kill it as fast as I can. And what's interesting in this season is realizing how many sacred cows I have. That's kind of been the humbling. It's like, now the 24-year-old guy is 36, and it's amazing how quickly you start forming these things, isn't it? It's just like, now I got a herd of sacred cows. But that's the delicate part. So that's where it's going to be hard. And that's where I had the leg up of starting a church and being able to set DNA. So you just gotta kind of dance that a little bit of, hey, hospital visits. would it be okay if I had this person do them as well instead? Like, can I raise up a team of volunteers? Every staff person on your staff should be raising up volunteers. Everybody. That's a shift that we have made in a big way. So my admin assistant, her name's Kaylin, she's great. She is quiet. She is naturally not what you'd think of as a leader. She's great with words. She helps me with blog posts. So she does a lot of stuff that's really unique. But even her now. So yet last night I emailed her and said, hey, when I'm out, I'd love you to develop a game plan for, she's got a passion for prayer. So to have a prayer team during the 8:30 service every single week. So she's excited about it. And now she's, at first though, she was like, can I talk with so-and-so to see if I can borrow their, she didn't say this, but basically, can I utilize their volunteers for this? And I was like, oh no, actually totally new volunteers. And then all of a sudden you can just see it in her face like, but so it's so trying to try that dance of like, what can we transition? Like even from your own tasks. That's what I would even challenge you. One thing we did a few years ago for our campus pastors and myself included, we mapped out our entire week. And then we had the campus pastors and myself critique other people's schedules. And it was fascinating, where it's like, all of a sudden I'm like, a campus pastor's doing something, and I'm like, you're spending 4 hours on that? We need to get rid of that. It's something that you didn't even realize was a huge drag on their schedule, cutting it out or delegating it. So, man, you need to delegate that. Or this, I didn't realize it took 4 hours to do that. I thought like 10 minutes. We're dropping that. And then allowing them to do the same thing to your schedule of like, you're doing that? And oftentimes, this is the hard thing to say, oftentimes there's a lot of laziness that you'll discover in your own schedule. I'm speaking just from a strength area right now, so I just got to say this lightly. There was only one other student who started and finished with me, and his wife was a med student. So, and I rarely ever studied at nights in seminary. So I finished in just under 3 years my MDiv. And my buddies are like, when do you do this? And I said, when Becky goes to work, I get up and I go to the library. And because I was newly married, I didn't want to hang out with a bunch of sweaty seminary dudes. I wanted to hang out with my wife because she's awesome. And so like the motivation was, you want to hang out with your wife, get out of bed and go to the library. Okay, I'm going to the library. But I think for some of us, we need that, just that kick in the butt of just like, how are you utilizing your schedule? So I would even encourage that. But big picture stuff like Advent Fest. We'd spent all these time and resources on Advent Fest. The only people who came was Embrace people. However, there was some really great things in Advent Fest that we loved. And so instead of just, so we killed Advent Fest, which was one of our staff people at the time, their like main baby. I felt bad. I'm like, I'm sorry, can I take your baby calf away? But what we did was we sprinkled those things that we loved throughout the Sundays of Christmas. So like, whether it's a photo booth, whether it's camels outside to take a selfie with, whether it's decorating an ornament, whether it's whatever, we did those things that were highlights. Live music, like a barbershop quartet, put them in the entryway or out front as people are walking up. Like, man, I love barbershop quartets. That's unbelievable. That's really cool. I've never seen that. And all of a sudden what's crazy is one of the dudes or one of the guys or gals or whoever in the barbershop quartet, man, I haven't been to church in a while. Like, I might just sit in one of the services. Now you got a story. And this guy who we just asked to sing out front came, and now his whole family's coming. Bam. That's a story too. That gives me chills just even thinking about it. So God utilizing something like that. Our guy who he just got out of the camel business, which is, I wish I could say that about myself. Just kind of getting out of the camel business these days. Like, I wish I had a camel. And but he every year would come, and he'd always poke his head in. He lived 40 miles away. But he always was so curious about what we were doing. And you could just see the curiosity, which I would say is the Holy Spirit just working in him of like, what's going on? Why do you guys want camels every year? You know, just kind of like, so that's where cool stuff happens. But figuring out what you can kill, it's a lot harder though in an established church of what can we get rid of. And again, if you have stories help. So trying to be as honoring as you can. Gosh, it's hard though. People get weird about their sacred cows. I do. I'm a hoarder by nature, a sentimental hoarder. It's like, you want to throw away what? But it was his first time he ever drew a picture of something I didn't know he drew. So Becky's like, we're throwing it away. But any other questions on that?
The other question I had related to the change to the Ninja Camp.
Yeah.
Was how did you connect the families and the young people to ongoing
Yeah.
pathways of discipleship? Because it could be just a really exciting event for one day.
And then it's worthless.
Okay.
Yep. So a couple things. First off, you may not see the results right away.
Okay.
So if they have a wonderful experience, a little bit of Jesus mixed in there, at that point, like that's really our agenda for the day is for them to feel loved, have fun, hear about Jesus. That's our agenda. They may not come right now, but man, it's Christmas time. We really need a church. Remember that ninja camp thing? Kids, would you want to go back to the place that had the ninja camp? They're going to be like, heck yeah, Dad. And instead of having to drag them there, they're going to be like, can we? So you may not see the fruit right away. But the other thing is reaching out to them. The next series that's solid that you think would connect with mom and dad, letting them know. So that first week that what we did, I think we gave with the next series, because that was kind of middle of summer, with our fall series, we reached out to that specific group of people and said, hey, any kids that come will get a ninja like headband. And just because we want to celebrate, and we showed the video that Sunday from Ninja Camp. So we actually held it like a month and a half because we were intentionally going to use it. Like, hey, this summer, you may not even know it, but we did a ninja camp, and I just want to show you this quick clip. Like, this was awesome. All the parents are like, even the stick in the mud parents who don't want change. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, awesome. And so you connect with the kids. So utilizing that information big time. Also, so we have the marriage event. You better believe parents are getting an email, an invite to that. Most of them, especially if that little hoodlums, their marriage is struggling. It's been the hardest season of Becky and I's marriage is kids just pulling at you constantly. And so, man, that's a felt need. Again, so I think just that, intentionally trying to do that. And I think just discipleship from there. Hopefully they'll end up in a large group of ours going through Alpha. Hopefully they'll end up in one of the other large groups of ours, 5 dates. Becky and I are leading the 5 dates material. It's Mike and Jennifer Foster. It's phenomenal. Becky and I are going through it. It's just laid out so well. Just a simple workbook, and we just kind of make it feel like an event. So we have, in our large group, we have 54 couples coming right now. So I think there was 54 couples last week. So on stage, we have an end table set up with a couch. And so we welcome people. Becky and I, it's been fun to do even as a couple. Find something, if you're married, find something ministry-wise that you enjoy doing together. And there might not be any fruit in it at all, but just something you just love doing together. Becky is the quieter half, but she's the wiser half. I love when she talks. And so we just welcome people, and it's so important you're here. We love that you're here. This last week we did a game to start, and then, hey, so we're going to break up right now, and the first time is alone time. So it's spread out throughout the entire building, just for you. It's 15 minutes. In 15 minutes, we'll interrupt you, and we have a simple dessert. So get a dessert, and then go sit down with your spouse. And on page whatever, the questions for you and your spouse. And just be in the raw, authentic part. I know for some of us here tonight, this is not going to be fun. For some of us here, we may not even want to speak to our spouse. And so I just want to acknowledge that, and I just want to challenge you to be kind with your spouse, to realize your spouse isn't the enemy, but they're your teammate. And so let me just pray really quick. God, would you just bless this time? Would this just be a sweet time? would we lay down our weapons that we have, our grudges? I mean, you share that, and then all of a sudden people are like, I mean, you just have their soul in the most honoring way. You're messing with their soul. And so they have that, and then they come together, and to kind of do something lighthearted, we show a movie clip. So the first week we showed a clip from Dumb and Dumber. I like you a lot. And then, so what are the chances of a guy like me getting together with a girl like you? Like 1 in 1,000? And she's like 1 in 1,000,000. So that's just lightheartedness, just adding that laughter piece. It's a 1.5-minute clip. And then, hey guys, okay, so right now we're going to break into group time. Find 3 or 4 couples. Just want to give you full permission. You do not have to speak. So if you're not at a place where you want to share, just listen. And why this group time? Because I know that as a married couple myself, one of the biggest lies that Satan tries to tell us is we're the only ones struggling. That's not true. All of us are a work in progress. And so I hope that you're encouraged by hearing other people share, and so that's why we're doing it. That time I worried would be really awkward because it's so personal, like, I don't even know these people and I'm talking about my marriage. But it's just, we've had to cut the time off because it's been so talkative. And then, hey guys, end of the night, come back in. Just want to tell you, next week you need to come back. So like what I said this last week, we meet on Thursday nights. Next week we have a couple. It's a marriage that I've looked up to most of my life. And Becky and I are going to interview them as part of the time. Basically, I'm saying come back, come back, come back, come back. And so that's kind of the follow-up plan.
Well, part of what I hear you saying is you actually design things to follow. So
Yeah.
you have a plan moving forward that they can re-engage here, they can re-engage here.
Yep.
And you get their addresses and contact information.
As much as we can.
Okay.
Yep. And in a non-greasy way. You know, just you got to think about it. Like, just I don't like giving out my information to anybody. Like I'll give you I'll give you my email address, but my cell phone, I'm like, I don't really have a cell phone. So just being really intentional with it. But one of the main things, and this is kind of jumping in outreach for a second, Christmas time, what is your next series? That if they're coming for Christmas, they should be hearing all about that series. And we try to hit a very felt need in January. So our Januaries, we go up. I think it's just that difference. That's that LCBC. They're doing that kind of stuff. So hey, we're so glad that you're here for Christmas. Next month, you need to come back. Honestly, January is one of the most exciting times to be around the church. This January, we're talking, and this was a few years back. This January, we're talking about sex. And so I might be an expert in the topic, and then people laugh, and I'm like, my wife would say otherwise. Just that honesty again, just that. Yeah, well, just that honesty part, and being true. If I didn't say that, I would be fake. Another random quick thing. Years ago, we always are joking on stage, and one of our campus pastors said, I told him, I said, sometimes are we being irreverent and stuff? And he said, Adam, I honestly think if we didn't do this on Sundays, we'd be fake. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he's like, we joke all the rest of the week. And he's like, we'd be fake if we didn't. And I said, I felt the same way. And also, I think one of the most holy things you can do, I feel like we're all adults, so I can say this. With my wife, away from sex, one of the most intimate, holy things we do together, where it's if you want to be in the holy of holies in my marriage, it's the moments we laugh together so hard that we're crying. That's what makes my marriage wonderful. Because sometimes life sucks, and you just need to laugh. And I think so often we leave laughter out of our relationship with God. And it's I'm the one who created this. And so not doing it in an irreverent way or a disrespectful way, but just that lightheartedness, all of a sudden it's I can relate with that. And man, my sex life in my marriage is struggling. Or I've slept with a whole bunch of people and I feel gross about it. And I kind of want to hear about what God has to say. The year we did a series, it was just called Sex. I'm not kidding, our attendance went through the roof. I couldn't believe it. It's a felt need. People are wanting to hear about it. People are wanting to hear about what does God have to say about sex. And It's not a thing to be ashamed of. And I think just talking about it is a powerful way. So harnessing as much January, even after after Easter, it was a 1-week series. What was our title called? Oh, Elephants in the Church. So that's what it was the next week. So we just talked about different elephants in the church. We saw it again. So trying to harness everything. If you do a marriage event, if you do something, what are you trying to get them to? So we've done women's nights, ladies' nights that have been incredible. Our last one, Lisa Turker shared. And I mean, Lisa, and at that time, it wasn't public with what she was going through. It makes me respect her so much more. I'm like, Lisa Turker, I will follow you anywhere. So hey guys, you're here tonight, ladies. This has been awesome. But we don't want it to end here. And we know as women, and this is a woman on stage too, it's not some yahoo, me. They'd be like, what does that bald guy have to know about anything about doing ladies? Get out of here. And so it's just a lady in our church who's just a pillar in the church. Women, I don't know about you, but I feel alone a lot of times. And I feel like I'm falling short. And I feel like I don't have any community. And so after this, we're gonna be launching a large group going through this. And so we have group leaders. Ladies, if you're a group leader and you want to stand, all these women stand that look normal. And all of a sudden it's like, these women just like, oh, I'm longing for this. I don't want it to end. And so it's just tapping into those simple things, being very intentional.
What are you talking about this January?
This January, we're actually I know what we're talking about this January. Give me 1 second on that answer. We just mapped out this year, which is new for us. Don't be impressed. I'll get that answer for you. We just did it last week and I'm drawing a blank. I think I have it somewhere over here too. It's kind of
Well, while you're looking that up, there was a pastor that I was talking to, Dillip from Sunbury, and they always do a hog roast at their church. And hundreds of people show up, but they never got their names and addresses. He said, we just simply got their names and addresses. We're in contact with them, and several of those families are already coming to their church. It's relational rather than promotional.
yeah.
And that's what he's learning. It's like, no, how do I have a relationship with these people and not just post an event in the newspaper or.
Yeah. Like even in Ninja Camp, try to tell kids not to tell their friends about Ninja Camp. Try to tell a mom not to tell her other mom friends about a Ninja Camp. That's like, hey, if you can't pay for it, they'll cover it. And a ninja shows up at your doorstep. I'm like the cheesiest person ever. I'm like, can the ninja show up riding a camel? I'd be like, you got me, I'm coming, okay. But you figure when you hit a felt need, then your promotion, you just can't stop it. And it's gonna happen. That's when you find something like, hey, our pastor's doing this series at our church, the 5 things that will kill your relationships. In a time and age when it feels like everything is killing relationships and nobody has friendships and everybody's stabbing everybody in the back and it's like, oh man, that sounds like something I need to do. Then it just happens. So if you feel the felt need, and Jesus met felt needs, and then he tied it to something deeper. Because ultimately, it's going to be what will kill your relationships, but the twist on every single message is what will kill your relationship with God. So it's that same thing, like gossip, it kills your friendship really, really quickly. But it also kills your relationship with God. And like expectations, like just those felt needs are as simple as you can get. Any other questions? Gosh, we have a lot.
You've been talking a lot about large groups. So does Embrace use large group as an intermediate step between worship and small group life? Is that kind of the hope?
Great question. So this is the learning part of Embrace. So small groups has been something, we had small groups before we even had our actual first worship service. So small groups has been a part of who we are. Becky and I have been in a small group for the life of the church. We've never not been in a small group. So it's something we live out to. It's something I'm super passionate about. Like, small groups is where you can dive deeper, not in the lame Pharisee sort of way, but in the true, like, God sort of way of caring for people, of loving on people, of asking questions that you're wrestling with, of digging deeper into a verse that you don't understand. I just got a call, a Facebook message from a gal last night. She messaged me at 10 o'clock at night. Adam, this last week you talked about our desires. James said, our temptation comes from our desires. So in the message I said, just to quickly say, not all desires are wrong. And some desires come from God himself. So and we actually talked in our message group, and I'll get to that this afternoon, bless you. I'll actually get to that this afternoon. We have a team of people who kicked through the message, and we actually kicked around that exact thing. It's like, I don't want people to think all their desires are bad and sinful. So I was like, can I go deeper on that a little bit? And they're like, God, I feel like it's a tangent. And I was like, okay, but can I just say this? And they're like, yeah, say that. And in hindsight, I'm so glad I said that. Because she even mentioned, you said not all desires are sinful, some come from God himself. So the question was, how do I know which desires are sinful? And God will give you the desires of our heart from Psalm 37:4, I believe it is. How do you know the difference? Man, I wish Hope is her name. I don't think she's in a small group. That's a perfect question for your small group. What do you guys think of that? What do you think? Like, I don't know. Like, I read here in this, it says this. Well, maybe kind of the correct answer. When we begin to follow Jesus, our desires become God. Like, our desires become more like His. And so, like, and just kind of checking things against God. Like, Lord, what do you think about this desire? Like, is this business I want to start? Is this from you? Or is it like selfish ambition? Is it like just a ploy to get more money? Because that's not of you. And so, like, that's where you can dive deeper into small groups. So I'm a big fan of small groups. What we found out, though, I'm a high extrovert, so I'll go anywhere, including getting on the camel with the ninja. And so I find myself in places very often where I'm like, I think to myself, this is how people are murdered and their bodies are never discovered. So I will go anywhere, like I have no idea where this is leading me, yet I'm so excited. Where most people are not like that. It's like, I'm gonna go to somebody's house to talk about Jesus with someone I've never met and I don't even know I believe in Jesus. That's a big stinking step.
Yeah.
On the weird zone, like, my weird meter is like pinging. Only Adam Weber is showing up to that. So what we discovered, though, so back in January, we did the momentum thing. You have to if you have Holly Brown on your team. We took the entire church through Dave Ramsey. So we had as many people as we could, not the entire church. We had 500-600 people that went through it. So, but we offered large groups for the first time. So, hey, our campus pastors are going to lead these large groups. They're at the campuses. Childcare is provided. So what a person sitting in the pew, first off, when we gave them the felt need, like gave them stats about debt, about credit cards, testimonies, stories from myself even. But we took away all the weirdness. It's going to be in this room with that person leading, with childcare in a place that your kids already know. No, that's not weird. I'm already here. So the entry point was so much easier, and then we saw hundreds of people who have never been in a group get into a group. And from that, though, this is the step we're trying to figure out, because all our pre-existing groups are still meeting, and we're pouring into them, pouring into their group leaders, blah, 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 blah. How do we get people from a large group then to a small group? But that large group has been a great entry point. So this year, for the large groups, we offer 2 large groups at every campus, Alpha and the 5 dates. Again, 2 felt needs. Alpha, if you've never done it before, it's so good. The Alpha series is the newest one. It's so good. And Nikki Gumbel and HDB are incredible. And they feel so Methodist. Like, it feels so much us. There's a little bit of charismaticness the one week, but it's kind of us, And so it's like, we talk about the Holy Spirit. And so we just had those again, and it's at the campuses right now, and saw an incredible response. And so now what we're hoping And that's what's great about the part of the night in both of those is group time. Hopefully, what we're seeing already, even in the 5 dates, it's only 5 weeks long. People are naturally forming groups. They're naturally like, hey, you guys want to meet up again? And all of a sudden, it's like, hey, how to get those groups to meet now at their homes. So we're looking at offering another large group. Alpha is like 12 weeks long, so that's going to keep going. But the 5 dates, once that's done, and 5 dates leads right into the marriage event, which is intentional. The relationships, 5 things that will kill your relationships, is intentionally right after the marriage event, along with another large group right after that. So I mean, it's trying to be as intentional as you can. Hey, you got these people at this marriage event. Hey guys, this next Sunday we're starting a series called 5 Things That Will Kill Your Relationships. We're going to talk about marriage, yes, but we're going to talk about all relationships. And so we want to invite you to come back this Sunday. We're starting this new series, so just trying to be intentional with that. But yeah, large groups is a huge part of things. And another thing is just getting people into the Word. So in January, discipleship-wise, we handed out cards to bring people through the book of Proverbs. We hand out, this is something that everybody can do. We do it. It's like a study guide. Like it's just one piece of paper. On one side, it's got questions off of the message, and the other side is a personal reading plan just for yourself to go through the Bible. So just those intentional steps. We give out the New Living Translation Believers Bibles for free. Hey, if you do not have a Bible today, we want to get you a Bible. So stop, grab one of those. So I preach from the NLT right now currently, just to try to help that too. So, and it sounds crazy. Like, so our discipleship plan is so simple. It's like if people are taking those steps, we're light years ahead of where most churches are, including where our church has been. It's like if they read through the book of Proverbs, the book of Proverbs is really intense. Like, there's things that are going to convict and challenge your life. And so, man, if we get them through Proverbs, that's incredible. That's kind of life change. So I think just giving ourselves credit for those things, like that's a big deal to get people through Proverbs. And so something that's been fun for myself, that's, again, unless you just have a desire to go write something. So I think next week I'm releasing, so I do these simple things where you sign up to go through a book of the Bible with me. And next week I'm doing Ecclesiastes. So I've already done the content, and you'll just sign up and you'll get an email for, I can't remember how many weeks it is, or how many days it is, through the book of Ecclesiastes. That's another simple way to just get people in the Word.
Do you do any online Bible studies beyond, I mean, that's like a sharing, then do you have chat times about?
Some of the groups have some online time, especially there's a couple ladies groups who after the kiddos are to sleep, that they'll do that.
That's one of our.
Yep, and Becky, so Beck is bringing a group through, I think she's in Romans right now, so she does it through Facebook. She's got a Facebook group, and she does that, and then they meet once at the start and once at the end. But otherwise it's just like, hey guys, she'll say, hey ladies, here's the kind of questions, what stuck out to you? And she'll have ladies comment on it, which is really, really cool. I just even had a couple say that like, they're dating right now, and they live out of different towns, and on the weekends when they're together, they go through that study together, and which was really cool to tell Beck. I was like, hey, I just want to tell you this, and she's like, no way. I was like, yeah, it's crazy what God can use. So, you have questions though on that?
We just started using the YouVersion Bible app, and canned Bible studies and so forth, devotional reading, and then you talk, whoever you have in your.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And it's free.
Yeah.
So when I mentioned our message time, so in the message, hey, today we're going to jump into the book of James. I want to encourage you to open up your Bibles. And I make a joke usually. I'm like, ladies, just throw your Bible in your purse. Fellas, in your purse. Just put it in there and tuck it away. But if you don't have the Bible with you, download the Bible app right now. Or you want to offend me, download it. I want everybody to have the Bible on their phone. You never know when you just need the Bible. A hard trial, a rock bottom moment, and so I just want everybody just to have that, so I push that a lot. Open up to the book of James, chapter 1, right now. Just download the Bible app. I push that constantly. Just I'm like, man, we need that. And just a quick side note, the Bible app for kids is amazing.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Our kids like devour it. Every time there's a new story that's released, I can hear the music playing right now in my head. I just like love it, so it's cool.
And Alexa, these days, Alexa and Google will read you the Bible, or they'll read you the verse of the day. So I found traction
It's
in
awesome.
my church just saying, tell your Alexa to read to you
Yeah.
in the shower, in the bathroom.
Yep. Even even the same thing with YouVersion.
It ties to YouVersion.
Yeah. Well, you
It's
just the
big.
ability to read, like, because I think there's people that are. My brother has a learning disability, and so struggles just to understand when he reads. And I just call that out, like, hey, if reading is something that's hard for you, listen to the Bible. And a quick side note, you're actually listening to it the way that it was originally would have been said. Like, it wasn't written down. And so just even those kind of nuggets, it's also like, it's kind of cool. I never thought about that.